Okay, so in this, for the last part of this video, I actually just wanted to turn right to the PDF document rather than you having to see my face and draw things out here, because this last part is a bit more complicated, and I will ask many questions about this on the exam. So basically, what I wanted to highlight here is really starting on, I guess, on page 6. Okay. So we have the short-run aggregate supply curve and the downward sloping aggregate demand curve with the E as the equilibrium point here. Now, the question then is what happens to the price level and what happens to real GDP if one of the curves change? Okay, well, as you can see in these three panels here, right, if AD shifts to the right, then the price level rises, real GDP rises. And if the short-run aggregate supply curve increases, right, that reduces prices and increases real GDP, right? And so you do all these things here, but then you need to ask yourself then basically is I'm not going to make it as simple as just telling you the ED curve shifts or the short-run aggregate supply curve shifts. Rather, I'm going to give you an event. And you're going to have to know whether that event changes the AD curve or the short-run aggregate supply curve. And then once you know which curve it shifts, then you can go to the far panels over here and see how it actually changes prices and real GDP. Now, this is a very important part here. Make sure you spend some time looking at it. Basically, these are all of the possible events I could give you right here. If I give you one of these events, any of these events here would actually shift. Sorry, I'm converting at the same time. Always seems to do that when I'm talking. Any of these events here all shift one of the curves. So if I tell you that wealth increases, that's going to increase consumption, right? And we talked about, well, what happens if I expect future income to be higher? Then I'll spend more. If the interest rate falls, then I consume more. If income taxes fall, I consume more. If interest rates fall, investment goes up. If I expect higher future sales, investment goes up. If business taxes fall, investment goes up. Foreign real national income, if it increases, exports increase. If the exchange rate falls, it depreciates or falls, exports rise. If the exchange rate rises, then imports rise. And all that then affects net exports. If the wage rate falls, short-run aggregate supply falls. If the price of non-labor inputs falls, short-run aggregate supply falls. If productivity decreases, short-run aggregate supply curve falls. If there's a negative supply shock, the short-run aggregate supply curve falls, right, in the sense that it decreases. So with each of these events then, it's important to see then how they will actually shift those curves and then the effect that it would have on prices and real GDP. Okay. I know I said earlier that you should look at the appendix to the chapter and look at the schools of macroeconomic thought. I'm going to not do that. You're not going to be responsible for that on the exam. Don't worry about reading that. Don't worry about that portion for the exam. Okay. That finishes this part of the chapter. Okay.